Hey, it's Peter Burns in for Paul. Coming up on the Best of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast. Booger McFarland back here in studio. He's got a recruiting story you will not believe. You got to hear it. And the Gainesville Suns' Pat Dooley checks in on the phone lines. And an Iron Bowl phoner feud between two legendary callers. All of it. It's going to be on the Best of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast, and it starts right now.
This is the Best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Pat Dooley from the Gainesville Sun. Pat, are you getting geared up? Are you ready to go? You already packed for SEC Media Days?
I get the wash in. I'm not packed yet. My packing will be done probably tomorrow. But yeah, it's a long week out there, and I'm looking forward to it. Though it's exciting. That the unfortunate thing, guys, is that then it's over and there's nothing happening for a couple of weeks. There's no practices. There's no games. There's nothing.
Pat, what's the biggest storyline that you're looking for when you show up next week? Is it Tennessee? Is it the quarterback situation? Is it all the defensive coordinators that have turned over? What's your biggest storyline?
Well, I think the biggest storyline really is the situation here in Gainesville, because it is, Florida has been pretty mediocre for 5 years. They had the one good year, and then again another new coach. Offensively, they've been awful for 5 years. So I think for most of the media, now I'm not sure I'll write about that because that's what I've been writing about for a long time. But probably the one I'm looking forward to writing more than anything is Steve Spurrier, who is a friend of mine, but who this could be it for him. This could be the last year. Last year was almost the last year for him. So that's the one. I'm curious how he'll answer those questions. As you know, he's going to be funny. How honest will he be about answering questions about how close it was to being the end last year?
Well, don't know if it's going to be last year, but we'll give it a try. Yeah, that's
I bet somebody every year, I bet a writer every year $1 that the first words he'll say are, okay, and the second thing he'll say is how many years he's been coming to SEC Media Day. So I'll bet you guys $1 that right now. That's my 23rd year here.
It's always great, especially in the midweek press conference, too. Okay. Charleston Southern. Don't know much about them, but they play football just like us. We got 11 on offense, 11 on defense. We'll be pretty good. They'll be pretty good. Just looking forward to a good game. It's that's the way Spurrier does it. Pat, how much do you think this year's success or lack of it plays into Spurrier's decision on how long he'll stay in Columbia?
Oh, I think it's huge. I think last year was a miserable year for him. I knew it was bad when he beat Florida in a game that he had no business winning, and was apologetic and was talking about Will Muschamp and how much he liked Will. And I went, whoa, that's not Steve Spurrier. Steve Spurrier's a guy who goes, yeah, we found a way to win. For some reason, they always play bad against us. But I think that last year, the Miami game kind of gave him new life. I think he was ready to go before that. And beating Miami in the bowl game, he mentioned I was at Ray Gray's memorial, and Steve gave a great talk, as you would expect him to. And he mentioned that his senior year at Florida, he lost to two teams, Georgia and Miami. And he said, we beat them both this year, so maybe there's some karma there. So, I mean, I think that winning I think he's got to have a winning season to come back. I think it's got to be a good take, and not 7-6. He hates to lose more than anybody, and I just think they've got to have a good year for him to come back for another year.
Pat, when you look at this conference, a lot of turnover at the defensive coordinator position, 7 new coordinators, and if you count Derek Mason, who's going to call the plays in Vanderbilt, there are going to be 8 new play callers on the defensive side of the football in this conference. Who's under the most pressure?
Look, you just gave me a good column idea for out there. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
$20. $20. I'm his agent, Pat. So $20 over here. We'll be in good shape.
I will buy you a cocktail at some point out there. I think probably the most pressure is going to be on Chavis at A&M because people look at him as a miracle worker. They think I think he's a good coordinator. I'm not sure how great he is, and A&M's talent is probably not that good. Muschamp, look, if they're average, people are going to love. They may have a statue erected to him at Auburn if they're just good or average because their offense is so good. I think for Chavis, there's an expectation, especially all the contract stuff they went through and everything, that this guy's going to turn it around right away. So that would be the guy. Obviously, obviously Derek Mason's under a lot of pressure. As you said, he's going to call the defensive plays this year, but they were not competitive last year. So they've got to get a lot better just for him to be, again, Vandy doesn't fire coaches, but he's got to get it. He's got to get it done out there. But I would go Chavis.
Pat Dooley, the great Pat Dooley of the Gainesville Sun, joining us here on the Paul Finebaum program. Pat, you covered the Urban Meyer retirement and unretirement, and going to Ohio State, and you were there for Billy Donovan and Florida to the Orlando Magic and now the Thunder. And we see this with DeAndre Jordan of the Clippers, reneging on a deal to go from the Dallas Mavericks all the way and stay back with the Los Angeles Clippers. How did those play out there, specifically in the Gainesville community, with both Urban Meyer and Billy Donovan's decisions?
Well, they were bizarre. There's no question about it. I think with DeAndre Jordan, it was in such a short period of time, but it was more of like a commitment. Like, in other words, you see these decommitments and silent commitments and quiet commitments, and which drives you crazy in recruiting. That, to me, was more what that was like. When you have a coach leave, and especially a coach, and Billy Donovan had won back-to-back national championships, Urban Meyer had won 2 out of 3. And for both those guys, when they left, it was just so bizarre. It was out of nowhere. And then for them to come back was even more bizarre. But they were different. In Urban's case, it really was Mickey Marotti, who was the strength coach, who walked up to him at practice the day after he announced he was leaving and said, "Do you realize how many people's lives you just affected? The secretaries, the support staff, the trainers, all these people." And that's when Urban went to Jeremy Foley, actually called him from the practice field, went up and they met, and he said, "Look, I want Steve Adazio to take my place." And Jeremy said, this is all coming from Urban. We've had many talks about this. And he said, basically, I'm not ready to do that, but why don't you let Steve be your interim coach for a while and you get healthy? So, and then, of course, it didn't work out. With Billy, it was like he came back and he goes, maybe I haven't done everything I can do here. Once he took the Magic job, he realized, I don't know that I've done everything I could do here. So he came back and tried to get it. And again, they went to 4 straight final or Elite Eights and 1 Final Four. So this year when he left, it was, we all knew there was no coming back. It was time for him. But they were kind of different, but at the same time, 2 of the most bizarre stories I've covered here covering the Gators.
Speaking of coaches leaving and maybe coming back, I think Les Miles' seat is a little warm in Baton Rouge. It may not be totally hot, but I think of all the coaches in this conference, his seat is a little warm. You agree or disagree?
I think it is, but I think he's the one who's made it warm because of the success. I mean, go back and look at your history, LSU. I mean, it's not like you were, national contenders every year.
Easy now, Pat. Easy now.
No. I mean, seriously, you had Mike Archer. Okay, this. I think that what he's done has been tremendous there, and has made them into a team. I mean, when you're sitting there and you're looking at this season, you're circling games that LSU's playing it because it's LSU. I think he's been really hurt by quarterback play, certainly last year, and I'm not sure it's going to be that much better this year. But I like Les Miles. This conference, there's a great line at the end of Silence of the Lambs, where she says, Jodie Foster says, the world wouldn't be as interesting without me. And I guess Hannibal says it to her. The world that's the SEC. The SEC would not be as interesting without Les Miles and Steve Spurrier. And one day we're going to have to deal without them. Okay, but I don't want it to be right away. I want those guys to be around because they're so much fun to talk to and so interesting in different ways. Spurrier's funny, biting, will shoot you down. Les you never know what he's going to say. He's out there. But I think, it's a crossroads year for them. There's no question about it. In fact, those 2 teams play in Columbia later in the year, and I think that could be a huge game for both those guys in terms of whether they're back next year.
And it'll be a press conference for the ages, win or lose or draw, no matter what. Hey, he's Pat Dooley of the Gainesville Sun, a legend. We will visit with him next week at SEC Media Days. Pat, as always, we appreciate the time.
Look forward to it, guys. We'll see you.
is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Jerome, welcome to the Paul Finebaum Show. What's up?
Hey, what's up, fella? First of all, this ain't the Paul Finebaum Show. This the Booger and Peter Burns Show.
There you go,
Hey, listen to
Booger
me.
and Burns.
Yeah, Booger and Burns. Listen to me, Burns. Hey, it ain't no problem with you sleeping on the couch, man. You gonna sleep on the couch plenty of nights if your wife is an Alabama fan. And listen to me, Booger. Listen to me, man. It don't matter. In love with, come on, man. You got to. You are LSU, man. What in the world are you doing in love with Tennessee?
I'm in love with the quarterback, okay, because I believe in the quarterback.
That ain't gonna help nothing. I believed in them last year. That didn't help nothing. I believed in doggone Blake Sims last year. That didn't help nothing. So what's that got to do with anything? Man,
You was a year too early, man.
Hey, but listen to me, man. If y'all keep predicting like y'all predicting, man, eventually y'all gonna get it right. Ever since little Nicky landed down there in the airstrip in Tuscaloosa, y'all been predicting he was gonna leave, lose, do something. He ain't done it yet, fella. Why in the world are we wasting our time? If 5 losses, Peter, listen, I was helping my wife clean up this morning. I like to pass out when I heard that. Listen, 5 wins, 5 losses. Peter, please tell me you playing. Because
Hey.
if not, But to be honest with you, Peter, I'm not worried about it, though. But I tell you like this right here, though. Like I told you before, if y'all keep predicting it, y'all eventually going to get it right. Little Nicky been whooping ass in the SEC since he got here, man. You hear me? Since he got here. After we lost the greatest offensive line in the nation, as y'all say, you know what we do the next year? We replaced them with 5 guys and won a national championship. You hear me? After we lost Parker Wilson, who wasn't worth nothing, and they told us to mark A.J. McCann, the rest of them clown down there play quarterback won't work from this. But guess what we've been doing every year, fellas? Can y'all tell me? Let me tell y'all, we've been whooping ass. So eventually, y'all gonna get it right. Roll Tide, have a good day.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Holding down Paul Finebaum's mighty throne here on this great radio station, on the great radio program for this great conference. And we get some of the legends. They're calling in right now. Let's go straight to him. Man, thanks for joining the Paul Finebaum Show. What's up?
Good afternoon, guys.
What's up, buddy?
That wasn't the Ohio players, and that wasn't Earth, Wind, and Fire. That was the man himself. And what did he say? I want to take you higher.
I like it, man.
Don't you like the way he said that? Higher! Just
Gotta
by
get
the
that
man.
octave, baby.
Higher! Yeah, there wasn't no engine out there hollering at Custer. That was Sly. You know, you guys make this show fun. And I don't know why everybody sits around and complains, because that's what this show is. It's fun. And yesterday when you said 8-5, the Bammers, that was a come apart like a Mr. Potato Head with no eyes. It was predictable. When I heard that, I turned the radio up. I said, "Don't touch that station," because I knew it was a meltdown. That was a bunch of people running around a bush till they turned into butter, and it wasn't even good butter.
We were trying to take them. Wait, you know what I mean? We were trying to take them higher. That's what we were trying to do.
That's right. Higher. You know, and you had to know that when you said 5, that there's every Bama fan out there. We don't lose 5 games when Nick Saban has a week to prepare. We win. Well, how'd that work out? How'd that work out with Urban Meyer? See, the Bammers, they wanted Florida State because they wanted to teach Jameis Winston a lesson, but it didn't happen. Oregon made Jameis Winston look foolish, and Ohio State did the same thing to the University of Alabama, and Nick Saban had the same amount of time as Urban Meyer. And, you know, everybody, the Bama fans especially, well, the SEC was down. No, it wasn't down. You were down. And then you get these Georgia callers calling, well, we beat Auburn. We got them 20 out of 20. I mean, what did it get you? Hell, who hadn't beat Auburn? But Auburn has beaten somebody that did something, and Auburn has done it themselves.
Yo. I think
Oh,
you're getting
mercy.
high. I think you're getting high off your stuff, off your air conditioning, you snorting jerk.
You see, you don't even understand what you're talking about.
Why don't you talk about your team, 8-5? You loser. You want to get on there every time and be the one-trick pony about Bama. Why don't you find you some new talk? Like how y'all gonna get out of 8-5 this year?
Will you hush for a minute before I push you off that tee? I mean, what are you hitting from the women's tee with this call? I mean, you don't even understand what you're talking about. You don't even understand the cost of Freon. It's high as gold. Why would I be snorting it when I could be selling it to you? And then, see, you don't even have a clue. That's all you got, one-trick pony, one-trick pony.
You don't even know
who
my
won
players. I know my team. I know Bama. I can name you players on the deep. You can't even name your damn quarterback, probably, because you don't care about Auburn. All you care about is coming on here and raving about Bama. So why don't you shut that freaking pie and get you a grip, and why don't you get higher?
Should I say to take control? I think I'm going to go ahead and take control now. Booger, you good with the taking control of that? Do you want me to take you higher?
Listen, first of all, don't sing again, Pete. And
come on, man. I can rock that karaoke style.
No, you can't, buddy.
You're right.
But, hey, listen, that's what you call good stuff. Two fan bases sticking up for each other. I like it. Listen, our man said he want to take you higher. There's nothing wrong with that.
You know what it is, though? I don't like it. I love it, Booger, because this is something that makes the SEC unique that no other conference can do. You don't get this in the Big Ten. You don't get this in the Pac-10, 12, whatever the hell they're at right now. You sure as hell don't get it in the Big 12. ACC, are you kidding me? This is a different fraternity of sports fans down here in the SEC, and that's why it's the best conference in the history of the United States of America, and I'll stand by that.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Paul Finebaum is out kale farming. Don't joke about kale farming. That's a legit deal. It's a side business for him, so he makes really good money.
No, it's not about the money.
Kale farms.
It's not about the money he makes. It's about all the kale that he farms so he can eat it. Because
that is true.
Paul hadn't gained a pound in probably 10 years, dude.
He's a $115 so cool. My favorite is when it's him and Marcus. And anytime, right around October, late October, early November, when they're doing SEC Nation on the SEC Network, and that you can just tell it's cold. And Paul is just knee-knocking. I mean, he's got like 4 fur coats on, Joe Namath, Willie Davis style, just doing it. Willie Beeman style, just got the whole fur coat action going because he's freezing. We got to put some meat on his bones, Booger. Got to put some meat on his bones.
Stop eating kale and start eating cheeseburgers. That's my remedy.
We could do that. Hey, I asked a question right before the break as a tease, what we do in the radio industry, about if you gamble on games legally. Of course, we do nothing illegal. None of you listeners, or nor me or Booger, never have done anything illegal. But talking about when you go to Vegas and you place a bet on your team, which now some of the Bovada odds have come out. Alabama 7-4 to win the national championship. Auburn 3-1. Georgia 4-1. LSU 11-2. Does it make you a bad fan if you go to Vegas legally and place a bet against your team if you're there for the weekend? Now, Booger, you can't really answer that because, once again, you have zero vices. You don't drink and you don't gamble. So I would assume you have no saying into this, correct?
Well, I gamble. I just don't bet on games. I mean, I love blackjack now. Blackjack is like it's peanut butter, cheeseburgers, and blackjack. Those are my 3 things, But as far as betting on games, PB, one, I just don't do it. But if somebody does bet on games, how do you bet against your own team? How do you bet against, like, if you're an LSU fan or if you're an Ole Miss fan, how are you betting against your team?
I do it all the time. If I'm a diehard Spurs fan. I grew up there. I played college golf out there, and I will bet against the Spurs anytime I get a chance because you know why? I figure when I'm in Vegas, I hedge my feelings. And I think that doesn't make me less of a sports fan. I go ahead and say, guess what? If my team, whoever team you pick, but if my team is going to lose, I'm going to be monetarily compensated. It's a hedge. I don't think that makes me a bad fan at all.
So basically what you're saying, if your team wins, you feel great, you just lose money. If your team loses, you feel awful, but you win money.
Right.
It's not the smartest thing ever.
Yeah, it's not the dumbest thing I've ever said. I think we've known that over the last couple of days. All right, Chase is in here on the Paul Finebaum Show. What's going on, Chase?
Hey guys, how you doing? First time caller. Just
What's up?
Happy to be on here. I wanted to comment one thing real quick about the gambling. I'm a diehard Florida State fan. I'm a diehard Jaguar fan. It's harder being a Jaguar fan, but I have learned not to bet on my teams because it never fails. It never turns out good. So I've given up on that. I just don't.
But would you bet? But Chase, would you bet against your team? Let's say that you're a diehard Jacksonville Jaguars fan. Why not?
Absolutely, because well, if it turns out and they win, I would pay $50 to $100 for my team to win. So
See?
So if it's going to bring me good fortune to bet against my team, I'll do it just to get the win.
There you go. You're looking at it in the completely wrong direction, my friend. You're basically paying the gambling gods to go ahead and do you a solid.
I've been too scared to try that theory yet, but maybe someday I will. And I just real quick, I just want to say something to poke the hornet's nest because I'm a Florida State fan, and I'm sure people are going to come barreling in after me with phone calls. But when is the SEC going to get off this high horse? You got swept by the ACC. The entire SEC East Division was swept by the ACC. Nobody's scared to come into Georgia and play Georgia, okay? LSU has gotten beat by Clemson in the bowl game a couple years ago. Clemson whooped South Carolina. Louisville whipped Kentucky, which I know Kentucky and Florida are jokes. But seriously, quit making it sound like it's scary to come and play an SEC team because you haven't done anything.
Oh, no. Oh, goodness gracious. I accidentally hit the hang-up button. I'm still getting used to this thing over here, Booger. The call screener deal.
Right.
I accidentally hit the hang-up. I was trying to bump his volume up louder.
Well,
isn't that unfortunate?
To his point, the SEC did have a pretty bad bowl season. I think we all can admit that. Some will say it's because the teams aren't motivated. Some will say the SEC only wants to play for national championships, and certain bowls or even the bowl season in general doesn't matter. Here's what I would say about the SEC in general. I think the track record speaks for itself. I think the era of invincibility may or may not have passed. Okay, I think the mindset across the country is it's a pretty level playing field when you start talking the Power 5 conferences, and I would agree with that. The difference between the SEC and the rest of the country, to me, has always been the defensive line. And this year, you're talking Alabama may have the best defensive line in the country. Missouri's always had a very, very good defensive line. The inside tackles at LSU this year are going to be dominant. Auburn, when you start talking about Carl Lawson coming back, Montrevious Adams. So the defensive lines are always where the SEC defenses have set themselves apart, and I think we're going to get back to that this year. Now, the rest of the country has always had great skill players. They've always had skill position players everywhere, but it's the defensive line, the guys that are 6'2", 6'3", 290 that can run.
How important right now is that defensive line, the trenches that you're talking about? How important is that still with when you go out there and you're going to be facing an Oregon, you're going to be facing an Ohio State team, you're going to be facing a team that likes to do read option, that a little bit more of the spread option offense. How much is that being diminished in the way that college coaches across the country are changing their game right now? Because it's no longer a 3 yards in a cloud of dust college football game that we probably saw maybe a decade ago.
It's not 3 yards in a cloud of dust. What it is, it's window dressing. I'm going to show you a lot of different curtains on the window before I raise it up and try to run it down your throat. Okay? There's, the zone read and the spread option. Pete, all that is window dressing. Auburn still runs zone plays. They still run power runs. They still run what we call gap runs. They just have different variations and different ways how to get to it. Football is football. It's still blocking and tackling and throwing and catching, and you still have to have. There's a reason that when you look at Alabama and when you start talking about Ashawn Robinson and you start talking about Deshaun Hand and Jonathan Allen and Jared Reed and all the guys that they have up there, there's a reason why people are saying that's the best defensive line in the country, because regardless of what plays you run, they will be up to the task. And so I hear you when you talk about the variation of the offenses, but it's still football. Okay, you can try to get me tired, but at some point you have to block me.
Well, And unfortunately, we saw what Ohio State was able to do against Alabama in that comeback. By the way, some breaking news, too, that came out. Braxton Miller has said that he will return. Not that this is a shock because it's been reported 500 times, but he confirmed that he expects to go out back to Ohio State and expects to play quarterback. We'll head out to Columbus and check in with Selena. Selena, welcome to the Paul Finebaum program.
Hey there, how are y'all doing today? It sounds like you're having fun.
Oh, man, it's sports radio. It could be a whole lot worse things to do in life, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I got a few things to talk about today. First off, diehard Tennessee Volunteers fan, I never bet a game Tennessee plays. Never. I will handshake bet on any other football game in the country, but I will never bet a Tennessee Volunteers game.
Not even like if a friend wants to do, hey, is this a friendly dinner? Selena, you and me at the steakhouse of your choice, my team versus your team. You won't even handshake deal, something like that?
Nope, I won't, because I don't need my prodigious powers of football mojo compromised by something as meaningless as money.
Wow, that may be the smartest thing I've ever heard in the history of the Paul Finebaum Show, Boog.
Oh, now, surely not.
Selena, before we let you go, let me ask you, what are you going to see out of your Vols this year?
I am kind of up in the air right now. Honestly, I think that worst case scenario, unless, we lose, I don't know, Josh Dobbs and the entire defensive secondary, I think worst case scenario is 8-4. But I think that the potential is there for us to beat a couple of teams that perhaps we would normally not be considered to beat. We have a few trouble clients that I'm worried about. The offensive line is a year older and a year better, and it couldn't help but be better after what it was last year. Only got the 2 running backs, although the recent transfer from Cincinnati is a good add. And still worry about the middle linebacker position. But, in the SEC, there's always some element that elevates a team unexpectedly. And I think that this year in the SEC, it's going to be quarterback play because there are so many great teams with outstanding talent who are looking for a game manager. And if you have a quarterback who can really elevate the focus of the offense, I think that's going to make the difference in some of these big, rivalry games. So I don't think that 10-2 is out of the question.
Hey, Selena, you're dead on with what we had earlier, and we were talking about the difference in, when you go ahead and talk about the absolute SEC bowl prediction, and that's exactly what you talked about earlier, right, Boog? It was the quarterback and the play of Josh Dobbs that makes you think that they're going to win the East.
Because of what I saw from him last year and where I think he's headed this year. And also, let's not forget, when you look at the wide receiver position, he's got a lot of talent there. Defensive line, you got Barnett, Kurt Magid. Tennessee is poised for a very, very deep run in the conference this year.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt, frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
How much different is the game now recruiting with these kids as opposed to when you were being recruited to go to LSU?
Well, number one, it's done a lot earlier. When I was recruited in 1995, I signed with LSU. I mean, it was really unheard of for a guy to sign or commit his junior year. I mean, you kind of went through the whole process, and signing day was a big deal. And we were still using fax machines back then. And, for me, I had, opportunities to grow all across the South and even in Notre Dame. And, it was all about the in-home visit back then. When the coach made the visit to the house and came in and, kind of sat down and met the parents, that was a huge deal because mom and dad had to sign off. And I'll never forget Arkansas, and Danny Ford came to the house. And, we grew up in the backwoods of Louisiana. We didn't have much. But, when you come to the African-American community, there's always one room that's going to be a little bit better than all the other rooms. You know, for us, it was the living room. And you
Is that
sit
the
down
company room?
Well, it's the company room where the plastic is still on the furniture and everything, okay? And so we're sitting down, and Danny Ford, you know, he's giving his whole spiel, and Mama's paying attention. And he kind of pulled back and leaned back in the chair and picked his right foot up, and he had the cowboy boots on, and put it on the coffee table. And, oh, the look my mama gave me, she's like, you know, she was expecting me to say something. I'm like, I can't say anything. It's Danny Ford. I'm trying to get a free ride to his university. So then he leans back with the left foot and puts it on the coffee table. And before you know it, Danny Ford is laying in a slumped position, feet on the coffee table, and he falls asleep.
No, Danny Ford falls asleep.
Danny Ford,
on your recruiting trip?
He falls asleep because his assistant was talking. And so he's over there nodding, falling asleep. And I'm saying to myself, any hope that I wanted to convince my mom that I may want to go to Arkansas is now gone, because Danny Ford's his ability, his manners, his ability to come in and show personality was just going down the drain. Like, you don't come in someone's house and try to make an impression and put your feet on the coffee table and fall asleep.
What did your mama say?
My mama just looked at me because my mama, she respects, and she's not going to make a scene, but she looked at me like, what in the hell is he doing? And, you know, you best believe, you know, Danny woke up about 30 minutes later, and, you know, the visit ended. And after, you know, Danny and the guy left, my mom looked at me. There's no way you're going to Arkansas. There's absolutely no way you're going to Arkansas. Now, flip it over on the other side, and Jerry Donato comes in.
Yeah.
And Jerry, you know, Jerry's not the greatest football coach, but Jerry has some pretty decent people skills. And Jerry played it smart. He allowed the recruiting coordinator to do all the talking, and Jerry just kind of stayed awake, paid attention, looked around, and, you know, Mom was like, you know what? I'm not sure about the head coach, the Italian guy, but you know what? The recruiting coordinator, I like him. And that gave me a lot of confidence when I chose LSU.
How crazy are the stories that you heard from different players growing, and not only just at LSU, but just talking about when you probably got into the league, you've talked to these guys, and I'm sure a lot of what you talked about was, hey, where you ended up going to college and where you almost went to. I mean, how there had to be something, too, about some of these guys, just some of these crazy recruiting battles going on at that time.
I've seen guys talk about that they got a letter a day from the school. So for 365 days, they got a letter per day from certain schools. And you know, sometimes the letter was full of information. Sometimes the letter was just to say hi. But, you know, from the standpoint of the crazy recruiting with the money, I've seen situations, and I'm not going to name names, but I've heard several stories where a lot of monies and tractors and lawnmowers and pickup trucks and farms were involved. Because the name of the game is to get the guy on campus, and if you get the best players, Steve Spurrier said it the best, well, football ain't about the X's and O's. It's about the Jims and Joes. And if you got the best Jims and Joes on your team, you're going to win. So, I mean, Burns, I've heard it all, from money to the handshakes to, you know, mom and daddy getting the tractors and the Cadillacs. I mean, you name it, I've seen it.
And you've also seen Danny Ford asleep in Big Mama's
the dude fell asleep in Big Mama's living room and put his feet on the coffee table. How do you do that?
Oh, that's not a way to go ahead and land a recruit. 855-242-7285. That's 855-242. Paul, we'll go back to the phone lines. Lance, thanks for holding, buddy. You're welcome back to the Paul Finebaum Show.
Oh, that's a great story, man. I just want to talk about this Tennessee hot with y'all guys. You said something about yesterday about McElwain's going to be facing long days at Florida, and you said the O-line lost 4,000 snaps. That O-line that they lost, they were all hurt. They never played together. Humphreys was hurt in 2013, and last year Chaz Green was hurt all year. And plus that Trent Brown got hurt, so that's what I'm feeling. Tyler Moore was a transfer. He just came in. So they didn't never have continuity anyway. But I got to tell you, man, you want to talk about Butch Jones, brick by brick, nobody lays up more bricks than Butch Jones. Just check the loss column. If he couldn't beat Florida last year, how's he coming into the swamp this year and beating them? I understand he's got plenty of wide receivers, and I think they're really talented wide receivers, but I don't think they can match up against our secondary. And I just think it's kind of ridiculous to think that Tennessee's coming to the swamp to beat Florida, man.
Here's what I tell you about Florida. Okay, number one, who's going to be your quarterback? Number two,
well, that's an easy question because Treon Harris came in and beat Tennessee on the road last year. He beat Georgia. He had a chance against Florida State. I mean, the sexual assault thing he got charged for really hurt.
Yeah, but that's a different time, and now you got Jim McElwain in, who's a pro style. Jim McElwain's a pro style coach. And I was down in the spring, and the reports are Will Grier is the guy that's kind of leading the charge for McElwain's offense.
That's who I like, Will Grier. But I was just talking. I mean, it's insane to think Florida don't have a quarterback. I mean, Jaws beat Vanderbilt, Kentucky.
But Lance, when you go back and look at it, out of the last 5 years, Florida has thrown 65 touchdown passes. 65 in 5 years. The only Power 5 schools with worse touchdown passes in the last 5 years going to be Navy and Kansas. Those are not exactly juggernauts. So what Muschamp had is different. I'm not trying to act like they're juggernaut on offense, but I believe in Jim McElwain. Look at his track record.
I do too.
Greg McElroy ain't the most talented guy. He's a lead above the shoulders. I mean, Will Grier is a talented guy, man. I mean, people are sleeping on Will Grier. I know he hasn't played yet, but there's a lot of people that ain't played yet that get a lot of hype. And there's been a lot of freshmen come in and play good. I believe in McElwain and his system. I like the coaching staff. He's hired people that's coached in the SEC before. They understand what it takes. They know how to call plays in the SEC environment. I just think it's set up nice. And with that defense, they're definitely the best defense in the SEC East. They're better than Georgia.
Lance, what's considered a success for you in McElwain's first year down in Gainesville?
Okay. I want to go at least 5-3 in the SEC, and I would like to go at least 6-1 at home. And I don't care about the overall record, but I want 5-3 in the SEC and 6-1 at home. I mean, to me, that's successful. Do you think 5-3 is possible in the SEC for Florida this year?
Well, Florida plays in the East, which is a definitely weaker division of the SEC. But when you start talking about 6-1 at home, I mean, you look at that Florida schedule, man. You know, they're going to be good in the secondary. We all know that, okay? We all know they're going to be good in the secondary. We also know that Jim McElwain is an offensive football coach. But at the same time, you got to take a look at the schedule that they're going to play this year, okay? September 5th, New Mexico State, East Carolina, Kentucky. I mean, their first game, I think that they are really going to face a team that's really, really better than them is Tennessee. And then you start with Tennessee and Ole Miss, and then the gauntlet starts. Tennessee, Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU, Georgia. That's
at Mizzou and at LSU, and then Jacksonville, of course, that game against Georgia.
That's 5 games in a row, Burns, right there. Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU, Georgia, front-ended by Tennessee. If you told me
front-ended at Kentucky with JoJo Kemp and Patty Ice, the guy that you like as well, in Kentucky, right? But this guy's playing a little bit better.
Right, okay, but I mean, you know, Kentucky kind of fell apart down the stretch when they started playing better competition. I realized the schedule was tougher, so I think Florida will match up pretty good against Kentucky. But when you start talking that 5-game gauntlet with Tennessee, Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU, Georgia, I mean, they could be 0-5. I'm being honest.
And and here's the deal, and I think with Florida, we'll get into some more of these calls here in a sec, but I think with Florida, the patience has to be there with Jim McElwain, because I think that he's earned that right, what he did with Colorado State. And let me tell you, I lived in Denver for a couple of years. I covered Jim McElwain when he was at Colorado State. No one wants to go up to Fort Collins. No one. That is not the mountains of Colorado. That is the farm pastures of Colorado. And with the amount of talent he was able to get up there in a facility that fit about 35,000, no real students really went to that school. What he was able to bring to Colorado State in that fast means great things for the dividends he's going to pay off down there in Gainesville.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN radio app.